Richard Hale was the kind of man who thought money could buy everything: power, loyalty, even respect. As the owner of one of the biggest companies in the city, he was surrounded by luxury, art, and people who only spoke to him in whispers of admiration. Yet, behind his arrogant smile, his body was failing. His doctors had given him a diagnosis that shattered his pride. His heart was deteriorating, and he would need an urgent transplant. But for Richard, the idea of receiving an organ from an ordinary person disgusted him. He wanted only the best, someone from a refined background, someone who matched his class. His assistants searched endlessly for a donor, but none met his impossible standards. As days turned into weeks, his health began to decline, and the walls of his mansion seemed colder than ever. One stormy evening, when the echo of rain filled the marble halls, Richard collapsed in his study. When he awoke, he found himself in a hospital bed, frail, pale, and surrounded by machines that kept his heart beating. The once mighty man was now a shadow of himself, and for the first time in his life, he felt powerless. The first time Richard truly noticed Maria, the cleaning lady who had worked quietly in his mansion for over 2 years, was the day he returned from the hospital. He sat in his leather chair, weak, frustrated, and full of anger at the world, and she was there, silently polishing the shelves, as if she were part of the air he breathed, but never saw. He watched her for a moment. Her hands were rough, her movements simple, yet graceful in a way that felt foreign to him. She hummed softly, a melody from somewhere far away, something peaceful that did not belong to the marble and gold of his mansion. "What are you doing here this late?" Richard asked coldly. Maria looked up, startled, and smiled kindly. "Just cleaning up, sir. You need rest." "Rest," he muttered. "Rest is for those who have the luxury of good health. You wouldn't understand." Her eyes softened, but she didn't respond. Instead, she carefully adjusted the flowers on the table and said quietly, "Sometimes, sir, it's not money or status that gives peace to the heart. It's kindness." Then she left, leaving him in silence, a silence that, for some reason, felt heavier than usual. Over the next few days, Maria's presence became impossible for Richard to ignore. While everyone else tiptoed around him with fake smiles and meaningless sympathy, she was the only one who treated him like a human being. She didn't flatter him, didn't fear him, didn't care about his wealth. One morning, when Richard had a coughing fit so violent that he could hardly breathe, it was Maria who rushed to help him. She didn't wait for the nurses or the assistants. She held his trembling hand and whispered, "Breathe, sir. Please just breathe." Her voice was calm but full of emotion, and for the first time he saw something in her eyes he had never seen in anyone else: genuine care. After that day, something inside him began to change. He started noticing things he had ignored all his life: the sound of birds in the garden, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of simple food, and every morning, when Maria came to work, he found himself waiting to hear her soft humming again. One afternoon, when his condition worsened and he was told there was still no compatible donor, Richard broke down completely. He screamed at the doctors, cursed fate, and threw a glass against the wall. When the room emptied, Maria entered quietly, unafraid of his anger. "Why are you here?" he shouted. "Do you think your pity will heal me?" She looked at him for a long moment and said softly, "No, sir. But maybe compassion can heal what sickness can't." Her words pierced through his pride like a blade of light cutting the dark. He didn't answer. He just stared at her as she knelt to clean the shattered glass, her hands shaking slightly but her heart steady. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in his mind, louder than the beeping of the machines beside his bed. For the first time in his life, he felt something he couldn't buy: humility. The following weeks were a storm of uncertainty. Richard's condition had worsened so drastically that even standing became a battle. His doctors spoke to him in careful tones, but the truth was clear. Time was running out. No compatible donor had been found, and his body was too fragile for much longer. The man who once commanded entire corporations now struggled just to command his own heartbeat. Maria continued to work quietly around him. She wasn't just the cleaning lady anymore. She had become a small source of peace in his collapsing world. She brought him tea, prayed silently when she thought he was asleep, and spoke to him about simple things: the rain that had finally cooled the air, the smell of the jasmine flowers blooming outside the mansion, The joy of seeing her young son's smile when she returned home after a long day. Richard listened, truly listened, for the first time in his life. Those small, ordinary details were foreign to him. His world had always been made of marble, crystal, and money, but Maria's world was made of warmth, sacrifice, and faith. And deep down, he began to envy her. One evening, as he sat in his wheelchair by the window, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon, Maria entered with a small bowl of soup. She placed it gently on the table and said, "You need to eat, sir." He smiled weakly. "You care too much for someone like me, Maria. You should save your kindness for those who deserve it." She looked at him, her gaze steady and calm. "Everyone deserves kindness, sir, even those who think they don't." Her words struck something deep within him. He realized how much of his life had been wasted chasing admiration instead of compassion, power instead of peace. But before he could respond, he felt his chest tighten painfully. The room spun, and his vision blurred. When he woke, he was in the hospital again. Machines beeped rhythmically around him. The doctor's face was grim. "Mr. Hale, I won't lie to you. Without a transplant very soon, there's nothing more we can do." He closed his eyes. For the first time, he didn't feel anger. He just felt acceptance. He thought of Maria's soft smile, her patience, her strength, and a strange calm washed over him. Maybe this was how a proud man learned humility, not through success, but through loss. Later, that night, Maria visited him in the hospital room. She looked tired, her eyes red from crying. "They told me," she said softly, "about your condition." He turned to her weakly. "It's all right. I've made peace with it. Some things just aren't meant to be." But she shook her head, her voice trembling as she said, "Don't say that. Don't you dare give up." She stood beside his bed, holding his cold hand in both of hers. "You taught me that even the hardest hearts can change. You opened your eyes to life again. I can't just stand here and watch you fade away." Richard tried to speak, but she silenced him with a gentle shake of her head. Her next words sent chills through him. "I've already spoken to the doctors. I'm compatible with your blood type. They ran the tests this morning." He stared at her in disbelief. "Maria, no, you can't." "I can," she interrupted firmly, "and I will." Tears welled up in his eyes, something he hadn't felt in decades. "You don't understand what you're saying. Giving part of your heart, it could endanger your life." She smiled sadly. "What's life, sir, if it's not lived with love? You once said no one from the lower class could give you something of value. Maybe it's time you see how wrong you were." He turned away, unable to look at her. The thought of her suffering because of him was unbearable. "I can't let you do this, Maria. I don't deserve it." She took a deep breath and whispered, "It's not about what you deserve, sir. It's about grace. You gave me a job when I had nothing. You saved my son when he was sick by paying for his treatment, even if you don't remember it. Now it's my turn to give something back. I want to do this." He was speechless. The woman he had once ignored, the woman he had barely seen as human, was now offering to save his life. Not for money, not for reward, but for love, pure and selfless. The next morning, the hospital was filled with a tense stillness. Richard watched through tears as Maria was wheeled into surgery. He wanted to scream, to stop it, but his body was too weak and his heart too fragile. He could only whisper her name as the doors closed. Hours passed like centuries. Every beep from the monitor, every step of a nurse in the hallway, every flicker of light felt like a lifetime. Then, finally, the doctor entered with a soft, tired smile. "The surgery was successful," he said quietly. "You have a new chance at life." Richard's heart, Maria's heart, beat strong inside his chest, and in that moment, he wept not out of relief, but out of gratitude and love so deep it shattered the man he once was. When Richard Hale opened his eyes after the surgery, the world around him felt different. The light seemed softer, the air warmer, the rhythm of life slower, as if the universe itself had been reborn with him. For a long time he just lay there in silence, listening to the steady beat within his chest. It was strong, but not entirely his. It was hers. Every pulse reminded him of the woman who had done the impossible, given him life through the purest act of love he had ever witnessed. For weeks his recovery was slow but steady. The doctors marveled at his progress, but what truly healed him wasn't the medication. It was gratitude. Gratitude for a heart that wasn't just keeping him alive, but teaching him what life really meant. He thought constantly about Maria, about her smile, her courage, her hands trembling yet steady when she told him she would save him. He had asked about her many times, but the doctors always gave vague answers. "She's resting," they said. "She needs time to recover." One morning, when the first rays of sunlight spilled through the hospital window, Richard asked his nurse to take him to her room. He was still weak, but he needed to see her, to know she was alive. When he entered the quiet recovery room, his breath caught. Maria lay pale but peaceful, her chest rising gently with each breath, the same machine that had once sustained. His life now hummed softly beside her. He moved closer, tears already blurring his vision. "Maria," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You gave me everything." Her eyes fluttered open slowly. When she saw him standing there, a tired smile spread across her face. "You look better, sir," she said weakly, her voice soft as a breeze. "Because of you," he replied. "Because of your heart. I don't deserve this, Maria. I don't deserve you." She shook her head slightly. "Don't say that. Maybe this was meant to be. Maybe my heart was just waiting for you." The simplicity of her words shattered him. The man who once valued diamonds now realized the rarest treasure in the world had always been compassion. He took her hand gently, feeling how frail and warm it was, and for the first time, he didn't feel like a millionaire or a businessman. He just felt human. Days turned into weeks. Richard began visiting Maria every day. He brought her flowers, read to her from her favorite books, and sometimes just sat quietly by her side. He told her stories from his past, not about his money or his empire, but about his loneliness. She listened, always patient, always with that same soft smile that made the room brighter. One afternoon, when the golden light of dusk filled the room, Maria spoke. "Do you ever wonder why things happen the way they do? You used to have everything, and yet, you were so far from life. Maybe this was God's way of opening your eyes." Richard nodded slowly. "Maybe it was. Maybe he had to take everything from me so I could see what truly mattered." She reached up, placing her hand over his heart. Her heart. "And now, every beat reminds you that love is more powerful than pride." He took her hand and kissed it gently. "From now on," he whispered, "I want to spend every day proving that I'm worthy of the gift you gave me. I don't want to live for myself anymore. I want to live for us." As the weeks passed, their connection deepened. It wasn't the kind of love born of desire or attraction. It was something far purer, a bond forged through sacrifice and grace. Maria's presence began to heal parts of Richard that medicine never could. She taught him to laugh again, to notice the beauty in simplicity. They walked through the hospital garden together, feeding the birds, feeling the sun on their skin, speaking of dreams neither of them had dared to imagine before. Eventually, both were discharged from the hospital. Richard insisted that Maria and her son move into a guest house on his property, but she refused at first. "I don't want charity," she said gently. He smiled. "It's not charity, Maria. It's home. Your home, if you'll let it be." After much persuasion, she accepted. Life in the mansion slowly changed. The cold marble floors seemed warmer now, filled with laughter and light. The staff, who once moved like ghosts in fear of their boss, now smiled openly. Richard himself began to help in ways that shocked everyone. He cooked. He read bedtime stories to Maria's son, and he even joined the staff in the garden. The proud man who once looked down on the lower class was now humbled by their kindness and love. One evening, Maria found him sitting on the balcony, watching the stars. She wrapped a blanket around his shoulders and sat beside him. "You're not the same man I met," she said quietly. He smiled, turning to her. "That man died the day you gave me your heart. The one sitting here now. He lives because of you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then let's both live, truly live." Life in the mansion had transformed into something Richard had never imagined possible. No longer was it a cold fortress of wealth and prestige. Instead, it was alive with laughter, warmth, and the quiet rhythms of a home filled with love. Richard and Maria had grown inseparable, their bond deepening with every shared meal, every conversation late into the night, every moment when her gentle hand rested on his arm, or her laughter filled the halls. Yet, even in paradise, shadows lingered. Richard's past, once carefully concealed behind walls of marble and money, began creeping back into his life. Business rivals who had once bowed to his authority now whispered and plotted against him, sensing weakness in his vulnerability. Former friends who had sought to exploit his influence and wealth now questioned his decisions, mocking the man who had once been untouchable. Maria, however, remained his constant. She moved through these challenges with quiet strength, never letting the world's judgment taint her patience or her love. Still, Richard struggled. There were nights when he felt the old surge of pride, a flash of arrogance he thought he had left behind. He would pace the halls, haunted by memories of the man he had been, ruthless, isolated, untouchable, and fear that perhaps he would never truly be worthy of Maria's sacrifice. One rainy evening, the tension reached a new height. A letter arrived at the mansion, delivered by an unfamiliar courier. Richard tore it open, and the words within stung sharper than any blade. It was from an old business partner, threatening to expose certain decisions that could ruin Richard's company and reputation. The letter was clever, insidious, designed to remind him of the power he once wielded and to tempt him back into the arrogance he had worked so hard to leave behind. He felt a familiar fury rising within him, but before he could respond, Maria entered the room, her presence calm and unwavering. She looked at him, her eyes soft but resolute. "Richard," she said gently, "this isn't you anymore. Don't let them drag you back into a life that doesn't exist. We have something they can never take, each other." But the doubts lingered. He knew she was right, yet the fear of losing everything, the love, the home, the stability he had fought to regain, gnawed at his mind. Maria, sensing his unease, took his hand in both of hers. "Remember, the heart inside you," she whispered, "the one I gave you. That heart survived when all else failed. That heart is stronger than fear, than threats, than anything the world can throw at us. Trust it." He closed his eyes, feeling the steady rhythm beneath his palm, the heartbeat that had become a symbol of their connection, of a second chance at life and love. Slowly, he drew in a deep breath, letting the warmth of that truth seep into his bones. Yet the world outside their sanctuary was relentless. A new challenge soon emerged. The hospital had reported a rare complication in Maria's recovery. While the surgery had been successful, the strain of giving part of her heart had left her body vulnerable to infection and exhaustion. The doctors urged rest, caution, and constant monitoring, but Maria insisted she could manage. Richard's anxiety skyrocketed. He spent nights awake, worrying over her health, replaying every moment leading up to the surgery in his mind, imagining the unimaginable. He realized that his survival had come at a cost, and that love, the pure, transformative love he felt for Maria, demanded more than gratitude. It demanded courage, patience, and the humility to accept that life could be fragile even in moments of joy. Meanwhile, Maria's own challenges were quietly growing. Her son, who had been slowly adjusting to the grandeur of the mansion, began showing signs of resentment and confusion. He missed the simplicity of their old life, the small apartment, the park near their home, the neighbors they had known for years. Maria struggled to comfort him, fearing that the gift she had given Richard had inadvertently created a distance between herself and her child. The tension between her two worlds, the love that had saved a life and the life she had once known, began to weigh heavily on her. There were nights when she would sit alone, staring at Richard asleep in the adjacent room, and wonder if she had made the right choice. She loved him more than she had ever imagined possible. Yet the world she had left behind tugged at her heart with relentless insistence. As these external and internal pressures mounted, Richard began to notice subtle changes in Maria. She was quieter than usual, lost in thought, sometimes pausing mid-conversation with a distant look in her eyes. At first he assumed it was the stress of recovery or the care of her son, but gradually he realized it was deeper than that. One evening, as they sat in the garden under the soft glow of lanterns, he finally confronted her. "Maria, you're not just tired, are you?" he asked gently. She looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's complicated," she whispered. "I thought giving you my heart was enough, but life has its own plans. I'm trying to balance everything, but sometimes I feel lost." Richard reached out, holding her hands in his own. "We've faced the impossible before. We survived death. We survived pride. We survived fear. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Maria nodded, but the worry in her eyes remained. Richard realized that love, the kind he had thought only existed in stories, was not a shield against hardship. It was a force that demanded resilience, sacrifice, and unflinching trust. And as the rain began to fall softly around them, the two lovers sat in silence, aware that the next trials would test not only their bond, but the very meaning of the second chance they had been given. The days that followed were a delicate dance between hope and fear. Richard and Maria moved through life cautiously, learning how to navigate the challenges that came with their extraordinary circumstances. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation and power, now felt like a living testament to the transformative force of love. Every corner held a memory of sacrifice, resilience, and small victories. Yet even amidst the beauty of this new life, shadows lingered, reminders that life's trials were never truly over. Maria's health remained fragile. Though the doctors were cautiously optimistic, they warned that any strain, emotional or physical, could endanger her recovery. Richard, now acutely aware of the price she had paid, devoted himself to her care, ensuring she never overexerted herself. He woke early to prepare her favorite teas, accompanied her on gentle walks in the garden, and spent long nights by her bedside, reading to her and sharing stories of the world beyond their walls. Through it all, he learned patience, humility, and the profound depth of human compassion. But life had more than physical challenges in store. Maria's son, initially skeptical of Richard and fearful of change, began testing boundaries. He would retreat to his old habits, resisting the grandeur of the mansion and the changes that had been forced upon him. Maria often found herself torn between protecting her child and nurturing the love that had given her family a second chance. She struggled, wondering if the heart she had given Richard had been worth the ripple it had caused in her own life. One evening the tension reached a breaking point. Richard found Maria sitting alone in the garden, tears falling silently onto her lap. "Maria," he whispered, kneeling beside her. "Talk to me. Let me in." She looked up, her eyes reflecting the pain and fear she had kept hidden. "I worry about my son, Richard. I worry about you. I worry about everything. I gave you my heart, and it saved your life. But at what cost? What if my sacrifice isn't enough to protect the people I love?" Richard held her close, feeling the delicate rhythm of her real heartbeat against his chest. "Maria, look at me," he said gently. "You saved me. Yes, but more than that. You showed me what life truly is. You've given me a gift no wealth could ever buy. And your heart, both yours and mine, has taught me that love is stronger than fear, stronger than any obstacle. We will face whatever comes next together. We are stronger because of what we've endured, not in spite of it." Her lips trembled into a small smile, but her tears persisted. "I just want my family to be safe. I want us to be happy. And we will be," he said firmly, brushing the hair from her face. "You've given me life twice over. Now let me give you the life you deserve. Not the life of luxury or comfort alone, but a life of love, trust, and joy. Your heart has been the light that saved me, Maria, and now we will shine together." The days turned into weeks, and slowly the tensions eased. Maria's son began to understand that Richard's intentions were pure, and their bond grew stronger through shared laughter and moments of quiet companionship. Maria's health stabilized, her body healing alongside the fragile but steadfast rhythm of her heart, now forever intertwined with Richard's. Richard, once a man ruled by pride and obsession with status, had been transformed. The walls of arrogance and entitlement crumbled, replaced by empathy, patience, and a newfound humility. He discovered that the greatest wealth in the world was not counted in gold or jewels, but in moments of selfless devotion, in acts of courage, and in the intimate closeness of a love that transcended circumstance. One evening, as the sun set in a sky streaked with orange and violet, Richard and Maria sat together on the balcony, watching the horizon. Maria rested her head on his shoulder, their hands entwined, feeling the heartbeat she had once given, him merging seamlessly with her own. "Do you remember?" Richard asked softly. "The first day I truly saw you?" Maria smiled, her eyes glistening. "I was just a cleaning lady, invisible to you." He chuckled, a sound rich with warmth and wonder. "I was blind. You showed me the world I had been missing. You showed me love. You gave me a second chance at life, and I will spend every day proving that your heart did not beat in vain." Her smile broadened, and she leaned closer. "And I will spend every Day loving you, Richard, because life is richer when shared with someone who sees your soul, not your wealth. The night settled around them, stars twinkling like silent witnesses to their journey. Their hearts, one of blood and courage, the other of generosity and sacrifice, beat as one, a living testament to the power of love, humility, and redemption. And so, Richard Hale, once a proud and untouchable millionaire, and Maria, a woman of quiet strength and infinite compassion, embarked on their life together. A life built not on status, not on wealth, but on the rarest of treasures. A love forged in sacrifice, tested by trials, and victorious in the face of life's harshest realities. Together, they had not only survived, they had found the kind of love that could heal wounds, bridge worlds, and transform even the coldest of hearts. And in the warm glow of their shared life, they knew that their story, once defined by struggle and pride, had become a timeless tale of hope, courage, and the triumph of the human heart.